Let's turn to the latest business news and plans by the carmaker Fiat Chrysler for big expansion in the United States. Our business editor Stephen Carroll is here with more details. Stephen.
That's right. The carmaker is going to spend $4.5 billion in the state of Michigan over the next 3 years. The move will create 6,500 new jobs. This at a time when industry experts are saying that US car sales have peaked and that other car makers are cutting jobs. But it's a big boost for America's motor city, Detroit, as Cole Stangler now reports.
The first new auto assembly plant in Detroit in nearly 3 decades. Fiat Chrysler says it'll be part of a $4.5 billion manufacturing expansion in Michigan that would create 6,500 jobs, a plan celebrated by local politicians.
This is a great investment that will have spin-off benefits for so many of us in this state. 6,500 jobs that pay $58,000 a year on average.
Under the plan, Fiat would convert an existing plant into an assembly factory for Jeep SUVs and update several other local plants. The expansion comes at a time when other American automakers are cutting back investment, scaling down production of old models and pivoting towards new technologies. General Motors announced last November it planned to cut 15% of its salaried workers and close 5 plants in North America. Ford, too, is in the midst of a global restructuring, preparing for thousands of job cuts in Europe, but also the US, as it seeks to trim $14 billion in costs. Others have been hit by new tariffs between the US and China. Volvo opened a new factory in South Carolina last year, but has slowed hiring because of what it's called trade issues. Either way, Fiat Chrysler remains confident in its new investment in the Motor City. It expects Jeep exports to continue worldwide.
The British government says that small and medium-sized businesses in the UK aren't making basic preparations for a no-deal Brexit. This is according to the latest assessment by London of the impact of leaving the EU without a deal. It says if there's no deal, the UK economy will shrink by up to 9% over the next 15 years, with Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales being particularly badly affected. Customs checks will cost UK businesses the equivalent of €15 billion a year. And given that some 30% of the UK's food comes imported from the European Union, the report says that food prices will rise for consumers and that panic buying could lead to shortages. Well, hopes of avoiding that no-deal scenario had put the British pound higher on Tuesday. It's climbing again today in trading, £1 trading for $1.32 and €1.16.5 as well. That's significantly higher than it was at the start of this week. On the European stock markets, we've got the main share indexes opening down. Companies news weighing on investors. In France, Air France shares down sharply. More on that in a moment. The aircraft engine maker Safran also seeing its shares fall by 1.5% after its latest results. On the Asian markets, it was a mixed picture today. Investors paying lots of attention to comments from the US Federal Reserve chief. He said that they'll shift to patience in their policy in the future. The Nikkei in Tokyo seeing some gains, but Shanghai and Hong Kong in the red. As I was saying, shares in Air France have slumped by 7% after the Dutch government said that it wants an equal say to France when it comes to the running of the airline group. It announced on Monday that it had increased its stake in the company to over 12%. That's compared to France's 14%. Paris says it wasn't aware of the Dutch government's move. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire stating that it was essential the company could be run without state interference. For his Dutch counterpart, though, it's about a level playing field.
In order to safeguard the Dutch public interest, the government has decided to take a stake in the Air France-KLM holding.
Air France-KLM.
The government's aim is to increase this stake to be equal to that of the French state.
Finally for me, Michael Jackson's former ranch, known as Neverland, is going back on the market. This time, though, the asking price is less than a third of the $100 million price tag it had in 2015. The price has been progressively cut over the years as efforts to sell the property were hit by the drought in California and the wildfires in Santa Barbara. But it's also going on the market just days ahead of the airing of a HBO documentary called Leaving Neverland, which tells the story of two men who say they were molested by Michael Jackson as children. Michael Jackson's lawyer saying that the listing is unconnected to the documentary release. Delano.
Stephen, thank you very much for that. Stephen Carroll there with a look at the day's business news. It's